that these people partake in.
I know when we were talking before the program, we talked about how a lot of times black people, we've been so traumatized by white people that we don't connect the dots. Our perception is a little lower than it should be, and myself at the top of the list. And we talked just about connecting those concepts: white supremacy, homosexuality, the occult. In fact,
yes.
Longtime listener, Miss Zanelle, also former guest, I was speaking with her this summer, and she said that I think the occult and white supremacy, they might just be two different terms for the same thing. And I think the easiest illustration, just for listeners to be clear, the easiest illustration that I could give would be the out in the forefront, really, the Ku Klux Klan, who white people will typically point to if you want an example of racism. And you see all three of those aspects in the behavior of the Ku Klux Klan. Can you kind of touch on that just to hammer that point home?
Absolutely, sir. The Ku Klux Klan is not just a hate group. It's not just one of America's foremost infamous terrorist organizations. The Ku Klux Klan is an occult organization. Their belief that white skin gives them privilege over all others is indeed a belief in magic that is, of course, is insane. And they practice that to the fullest. Their whole goal, their ceremonies, their ritualistic murders are occult activities. The sexual mutilation of men, the sexual mutilation of women, the hangings by rivers, burning victims, just as the witches of Salem were burnt at the stake. Those are occult activities, and a lot of times black people, we've just been so traumatized, as you stated, that we did not realize, yes, these people are occultists, arch occultists.
For people who might be listening in and saying, well, I don't agree, I don't think that's true. The Klan, I mean, they frequently will speak out publicly against homosexual behavior, and I don't know about the occult aspect either. I mean, they say they're Christians, they frequently are burning crosses. I guess I would point out with the occult aspect, just looking at a lot of the names, Grand Wizard and all of these names, they sound as though they're using terms that are frequently associated with the occult, witchcraft, that sort of thing. Just a lot of the rituals that they participate in. And I think you could easily make a case that these are sacrifices, blood rituals.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. The castration as well, I was just going to throw that in for the homosexual aspect. Frequently the castration of black males, and I think I said this consistently, I view lynchings, that is some sort of sexual orgy. I think white people get a lot of sexual gratification out of that process. There's a lot of evidence of them castrating black males, cutting out the vagina of black females, breasts of black females, and keeping those appendages, believing that there's some sort of magic power invested in them. I believe we read a passage on the program, Red Summer, where it was a white man had cut off the fingers of a black male, and he was so proud. He had it on display in his store and was inviting people to come by. To me, particularly when you're talking about removing sex organs, males removing another male's sex organs, that very much in the realm of sexual deviance, some sort of sexual orgy, and I would say very much related to homosexual activity. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, you're exactly right, and it goes into the very reality that homosexuals, especially in this nation, are dedicated to white supremacy. As white males, they're saying to black people that they love white men and their white skin so much that they're not letting that go. And because they themselves are white males, it is in their vested interest that white supremacy, as by way of occult practices, be maintained as the dominant form of control, because when you're talking about white supremacy, that trumps politics, it trumps religion, it trumps business. It is the entire, complete, absolute agenda as an occult practice, an occult belief of maintaining dominance in a given civilization.
Context of... Oh, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Oh, no. I apologize. I was just going to give an example that, yes, the Ku Klux Klan, they are a cult. And many of the members, if not most of the members, they are homosexual. That's why wherever the Ku Klux Klan have gone, there have been very prominent serial killers. Just for example, in Atlanta, many of the serial killers were white supremacists, and of course, those that murdered a lot of black people, they were serial killers, and many of them are homosexual. That's why, to this day, Atlanta is a major hub for homosexuality in America. 35 to 40% of the population between Atlanta's home of Fulton County. Atlanta is primarily 95% Fulton County. 5% of it is in DeKalb County, basically. But between East Atlanta and DeKalb County, 35 to 40% of the entire population is gay. And in America, I'm sorry, but in all honesty, the gay populace is advocating and practicing white supremacy.
Definitely agree. My princess boy, all of that is not harmless, incorrect behavior, in my opinion. It is lethal. And again, just mention the same film I mentioned yesterday, The Strangeness of the Johnsons. All of this very purposeful. As I said on my Facebook post, the art of war. This is how you normalize destructive behavior. This behavior, as you heard the sound clip from Dr. Nell Irvin Painter, this is the history of white people. Pedophilia, homosexuality, these sex rituals, white supremacy, that is the history of white people. And it's just about, honestly evaluating what happens so we get a better understanding of the world around us, and hopefully to motivate us to get on that job to replace white supremacy with justice. With what happened at Penn State, with your knowledge, doing the research on the Atlanta child murders and the other pedophile rings that you've been studying, when everything first broke out, became major media news with Jerry Sandusky and what happened at Penn State, you said your initial response was laughter. Why was
I
that?
laughed. I laughed. It wasn't because I think it's funny. It's because I really wasn't surprised. And by that Wednesday, when Joe Paterno's legacy, not just his career, but his very legacy was ended, it was very clear that the situation is worse than what they're revealing to the public, and that sex ring was in operation for a lot longer than they want to divulge to the public.
I guess just if you could share why you think the sex ring, and you said sex ring, you're not talking about this as though this was just Jerry Sandusky's dementia, that this was a group sex ring for molesting, it appears, young boys. Why do you think this has been? Why do you think this is larger than what's being reported?
Sure. In 1977, a nationally operated sex ring was broken by the federal authorities. One of the key suspects in the ring was a man, a multimillionaire named Francis Sheldon. He was an Ann Arbor, Michigan resident. He basically, he was a pilot, and what he was doing was flying boys back and forth from their neighborhoods to his retreat for sexual purposes on North Fox Island in Michigan. It's like off the east coast of Michigan in one of the Great Lakes. Sheldon and some other people fled the country before the ring. They got word that the ring was being investigated in 76. By 77, they fled. Sheldon, he first went to the island, but he mainly settled in Europe, and he basically died a fugitive from justice in 96. And the ring that he was a part of, it had operations in New Jersey, Louisiana, and I believe it was Florida and Tennessee. Another associate of his was operating the New Jersey branch. It was this guy named Malcolm McConaughey, who legally changed his name in 1976 to Adam Starchild. Starchild is a major child pornographer. He's a major pedophile. He had been arrested all the way back in 1968 for basically sexual perversion involving a 16-year-old boy. And even after his association with Francis Sheldon, he was arrested for child pornography charges. He spent several years in jail in the 1980s, and he too has been all around the world. He's a writer, and one of the things that he does is he handles money, and he's a serial pedophile, and he is a very wealthy man, and this is the lifestyle that they live. A lot of people assume that these sex rings are local and they're these quirky, sadistic people from the middle class. But no, these are rich people that are well off, that they have these sadistic proclivities. They are attracted to boys at all costs. And by the 1960s, 1970s, they orchestrated a national sex ring. And they would utilize their wealth to finance their proclivities. They would pass around photographs of boys. Then they would fly in or drive in the boys out of certain cities into other states. And this ring, this national operation, it was big money. And these people are perverts at heart.
Context of white supremacy. I definitely want people to keep that in mind. You can do research. They had major Senate committees talking about the widespread, well-financed pornography and pedophilia rings that began just exploding in the 1970s. And a lot of this on the back of so-called gay rights. If you do the research, a whole lot of this was tied in together. But just keeping in mind, not only the late 70s did you have the Atlanta child murders, so-called Atlanta child murders began, but just before that, we touched on this before, Cabbagetown in Atlanta, child pedophile ring that got busted in Atlanta, and this was just before everything began, publicly anyway, with the so-called child murders case. And also, tied to Penn State, the Second Mile Charity Foundation, founded in 1977. So same time period, just to kind of give some additional context. I know specifically with Penn State, major football university, Jerry Sandusky, former assistant coach, football coach at Penn State, Dr. Wellesley yesterday, I thought she laid out eloquently the fact that there's a lot of sexual symbolism